Hello, Pete, you human.
That I am a human. No one has addressed me that way.
I'm so glad. Let me tell you what, because whenever I have to do one of these talks for a robot, it really makes my day boring. How's your day going?
My day is nice. We've entered the first little cool window of time of the summer here
Yes.
where I am in Massachusetts, and I'm in a long sleeve shirt for the first time since I
Yes.
think maybe May. It's a nice
Yes.
change.
It's a little chillier here
I'd
too.
imagine
Yeah.
it's fairly similar in New York.
Yeah. Are you feeling pretty moved into the house now? You feeling like a master of your universe?
Oh, Mark, the house is great, but it's also a money pit. Um,
Aren't they
we
all?
moved
Aren't
into a
they? Oh
house
my
with a
God.
pool, and I was warned pools
Oh
aren't
boy.
cheap.
Okay.
And I'm not going to give you the full rundown of what went wrong, but let's just say that in a competitive market where you have to waive your inspection, you're
Oh
waiving
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
contingencies to get your
Yeah.
home.
No.
Let's just say that the inspector would have found one or two things with the pool,
Okay.
and we found it ourselves, and I got to spend a little money. But
Oh.
you know what? Outside of that, we are thrilled. We love our
Hey,
home. Kids are
listen.
living in fantasy land. Nothing to complain about.
Yeah, I mean, great value add for listeners. A little pro tip: in addition to gym business, try to get your home inspected if you can, and then if you can't, listen, we gotta pay for Pete's pool, everybody. So you have a great way to contribute to that. There is a link in the show notes for Business for Unicorns Gym Lead Blueprint. It is a webinar that I will be hosting. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a 2-hour webinar. We're going to do a super deep dive into all sorts of things related to getting more leads for your gym. I'll be talking about a number of relatively newer strategies that I hadn't really heard of until recently that are working really, really well for a number of gyms that we work with. I'll be talking about some things I've heard of for a long time and frankly just didn't do that great a job with historically. I've learned better ways to do. So you'll want to be there. It's happening on Monday, September 9th at 10 a.m. EST. It is a 2-hour workshop. And this is, although it is paid, it's $47. We're practically giving it away. We will send a video after the fact, but only for people that register. So you can find it up in the show notes below. Go ahead, give that link a clicky, sign on up, and I'll see you there. We will talk about a number of things. But one thing today we'll talk about here on the podcast is something that I mentioned briefly, but because it's not one of my go-to fast results strategies, it's not actually in the Gym Lead Blueprint. And it is a topic that I feel very passionate about, as is often the case when it's something I think I struggled to do well for a long time. And I've had some recent, I think, evolutions in my thinking on how to get leads through this lead source. So although it is not something you can wave a magic wand and get zillions of leads, when you get it right, it can be like striking oil. I'm excited to chat with you about this, Pete, because I know that some of y'all have done well over the years. So what is that? Well, you know, listener, you've seen the name of this podcast. It's joint ventures, or I often call these business partnerships, but Pete really helped me when I confused him before we started filming the podcast. I was like, this is going to be about why your business partnerships don't work and what to do instead. And Pete was kind of like, oh man, I feel pretty good about my relationship with Eric, and you seem pretty happy with Keeler. So I realize that term is maybe a little bit confusing. Oftentimes, this is somewhat synonymous with joint venture. Basically, this means when you are cross promoting your business with another local small business. That's why I tend to use the term business partnerships. I think it's on the one hand a little bit more intuitive, but now Pete, you got me questioning that because now people are going to think like how to make your partnership with Michael Keeler work. But anyway, I'll be excited to jam on this. So Pete, I have some new distinctions I'm happy to share, but I'm wondering if you can share for the listeners a little bit about your historical experience, because obviously this, my understanding, has been a big part of how Cressy Sports Performance has become the empire it has over the years.
Yeah, well, the listener doesn't realize that it took 2 to 3 minutes of us discussing this before I realized we were not talking about our in-house
Yeah.
business partners, but we were in fact
Yeah.
discussing joint ventures. And I didn't want to push back too hard because I didn't know where you were going with it. But I agree. I have had some success in joint ventures of this nature, but I don't think you're wrong in that you hit me with some statistics. I don't know whether they were hard or not, but they were pretty specific in that you got to look long and hard to find somebody
Yeah.
who has got more wins than losses in this realm.
Yep.
And for us, it's interesting. I'd say the the joint ventures that we have, the mutually beneficial relationships tend to just get brought in house. You know, we had a great relationship with Andrew Millett as a physical therapist, sending business in each direction. And the next thing you know, we were like, you know what, screw this. Let's just bring you into our business, run yours here, be a tenant, do your thing.
Yeah.
And so I have joint ventures that also have kind of a tenant rent agreement, but it doesn't change the fact that the origin story was the same as what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I guess certainly I have a couple models I think will be useful for people to think through. But I'm just curious to understand if you can take us back in time to when Cressy Sports Performance was just getting going, and you were not yet the nationally known behemoth that you are today. I'm curious to understand, what were the plays like in the very beginning, right? When you were, not dissimilar to the positions of a lot of gym owners and performance facilities listening. I'm curious, what did it look like when you first started to attempt to make those inroads into other aligned businesses that potentially you could work together and potentially drive some business for each other?
You know what, Mark? We didn't set out with the intention of finding businesses that we could work with in this context.
Ding,
What
ding,
we
ding,
did
ding,
was
ding, ding, ding. We'll come back to that in a minute. Keep going. Keep going. Ding, ding, ding.
Okay,
Walk
fair
right
enough.
into my trap.
All we did was build our network, vet our community, make friends, and then friends who were in adjacent businesses were logical people for us to work with. And so there wasn't ever a moment where we were like, how can we go out and find an existing operation that can help drive more leads to us and we'll do the same? Not at all. More often than not, it was somebody who owned a business trained with us. We talked about their business during warm-ups. They asked us questions about our business as they were in between sets. And somewhere along the line, we were like, you know what? You're a pretty cool person. And you seem like someone who has high integrity. And we are philosophically essentially on the same page. I think it would make a lot of sense for us to push leads in each other's direction. And there was never cold outreach. There was never a moment where I walked into somebody's shop with my business card and was like, hey, I'm in town, you're in town. How about we help each other out? Now, it's not that I don't think that's a worthy initiative. It's just that's a considerably less likely to succeed play. Yeah. You can do it. It's a high volume play, though.
Yeah. I think that's precisely it. Yeah, because I think that the first potential takeaway for people listening is the best source, of course, of potential joint ventures or business partners, depending on the words you want to use, are, of course, your existing clients. Because these are people you already have a relationship with. In many situations, you already know them. Because here's another strange thing about business partnerships that no one says out loud. I understand why, because there are a lot of other things to say about it. But in a perfect world, you would work with businesses that are good. And most businesses are not good. And you maybe don't vibe with like the ownership. And maybe, this is intense to say, the product is not great. So what none of us want to do is get in a situation where you find an amazing, eager partner that's willing to drive marketing for you, and exchange, you're willing to drive it for them. But in fact, the product is not good. And sometimes, similar how I think in the world of gym business coaching, there's always the assumption that like, you're already amazing at what you do. Everybody loves your services. You're already incredible. You just need to learn how to get leads. And being an old curmudgeon old man already at this point, I guess, I say, I reject that claim. I'm not 100% sure that there's maybe not some room to improve your services. So I think certainly vetting, if you're going to go hard in the paint and really promote another business to your clientele base, to your audience, certainly one piece of this is understanding, okay, how is this actually a business I'm 100% comfortable sharing and directing clients to, is one piece. And then number two, as far as that while there is, I think, a time and a place to do some cold outreach, and I'll talk about some of, I think, the frameworks that are important if you're going to go that route. Of course, the best place to start is with your existing clients, because it seems nary can you find a gym owner that doesn't have at least a few clients that are also small business owners. And by definition, they're local small business owners, which means they are fertile ground to begin some conversation around potentially creating a joint venture.
Yeah, but you might also be missing the opportunity to point out maybe the most important part, which is if they've been training with you, they already know how to describe your service offering.
Yeah, also true.
And when they do have the opportunity to push a lead or two in your direction, they're effectively good salespeople. And I
Yep.
always talk about how important it is that we teach our athletes how to talk about what we do, in the sense it's the justification for us teaching the why behind the what when we're talking to our athletes about what we programmed, why it's in there, how it makes sense for them.
Yep.
That's partially for them, but it's partially so that when they sit down on the bus next to a kid and the kid's
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, how in the world are you 20 pounds heavier than you were when I saw you
Right.
start of last season? And you're like, oh, I've been in the gym, I've been
Yep.
working out, and you start to talk about what you're doing. That kid sells really effectively for me. Same with our joint venture partnerships. The people who train with us for a year, 2 years, and then we agree, hey, my business can really complement your business. They just talk about their own experience and they do it with conviction, and it just works. It's wonderful.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think that leads to maybe one of the first things I think people need to think through is I think a very important point you're making, Pete, that we want to highlight for people is I don't think this ever works great if there's a tit for tat intention. Right. And maybe this is me getting woo energetically, but if this is just pure transactional mercenary stuff, I don't know. I guess it could work, but I think there's something to be said for going with a giving hand. And I think the first
Mm-hmm.
thing that I see a lot of people do wrong is not being willing to be wildly generous with adding value first until eventually you overwhelm people with the law of reciprocity and they feel weird and they kind of want to do something for you. Right. So I think for that to work, you have to be somewhat expectationless. I'm not saying that money's no constraint. I'm not suggesting you can necessarily spend thousands of dollars at hundreds of small businesses and just say like, oh, well, whatever, do. I'm not saying that there should be no strategy involved or no consideration of what types of businesses you're going to promote in this way. But obviously, the advantage of working with someone that's already a client is they already value what you do. Hopefully, presumably they're already having a good experience. And importantly, you already have a relationship, right? The cold outreach can work, but this is specifically the reason it's not in Gym Lead Blueprint, because that's very much focused on getting leads fast. And listen, the law of the farm is something I've become a broken record talking about it. I'm not suggesting you can massively grow your gym overnight, but the reality is, out of the number of things you could do to grow your gym, and if you want the whole list, go to gymmarketingsecretsbook.com and download my free book on this topic where I cover every way you can do it. In practice, there's some ways to generate leads that just happen faster, right? If you pay for digital leads, you're going to have leads faster. They're not always the warmest leads, but you'll get them overnight. A business partnership doesn't work like that. You can't walk into the coffee shop on Monday and expect by Tuesday night they're going to be driving you leads. And if they are, again, that becomes weird. So I think putting the relationship first is a key. And specifically, again, looking to add value. In my favorite books, The Go-Giver, right? Just looking to just relentlessly be of use, to be of service, to build up your local community businesses, to give without expectation, trust karmically it's going to come back around, I think is very, very important. And to make this tactical for you to operationalize this, I think it's often a good idea to make a handful of lists. So certainly the first list you should make is of the businesses. And I think it should be a lot more than you think. I'll come back to that in a minute. A list of all the businesses that you could potentially have some sort of cross promotion with. But then you're going to need a list of what are all the things you can do for that business. I think much lower down the line, important, you should think on this too, is what are the things you could get from this business. So when people do this in the unicorn side and they run this playbook, you first have to brainstorm what are all the ways I can make this business owner, this decision maker's life better. And certainly some of it is buying their product, maybe buying their product, giving it away to members, maybe doing some sort of shared email gathering giveaway with a bunch of local small businesses. So that type of stuff is awesome. And another thing you can offer is giving them a membership or giving them some discount or somebody to sample what you do, because most people have a body. The thing that's nice about a gym is, unlike a lot of services, almost anybody would want to be more fit. Now, they might already have a solution. They might not be into fitness, right? I'm not suggesting necessarily everybody's going to be fertile ground for this, but in practice, you can go in with a giving hand. And for the decision makers, the business owners, one of the things you can give is some service offering for them to try out what you do, get some of the results that you can offer. I would note briefly, I would caution you against having a forever membership or a forever discount or come and train with me for free, and then in exchange drive business for me. I don't think that's usually the best way to do it. I think it's better to have it be a discrete thing. It could be either a free or massively discounted version of your low barrier offer. You can maybe do a community class for the people that work in the business. You could maybe offer this discounted either assessment, low barrier offer, what have you, to everybody that works in the business. But if you have not created a list of all the things you can do, I think that's important. I think the other number of low hanging fruit I'll share briefly is post about them on social media through your business's social media handle, right? If you just keep doing that over time and being friendly, they'll feel weird if they're not in some way reciprocating at least your friendship. I'm not saying they'll necessarily do anything for you, but if somebody keeps driving your business, it's hard not to like them over time. Now, and you can, and you could consider doing things like emailing your list or maybe some of your members. I think you have to be a little more canny about email marketing, as that can become noise and blow out the social capital that you need in most cases to build value and develop a relationship with your existing audience. And of course, you can also in the gym potentially have a community business of the month, which maybe goes up on a board. You could have them potentially for some businesses based on the relationship and what you offer. Perhaps there's some sort of materials that you allow them to have at the front desk of your business, or again, maybe on some kind of community board. So those are some of the give things. I'll pull up there, Pete. Is there anything else that you think people should consider when they're thinking about how they can add value to another small business owner?
You hit so many things that I would have said. We've got our biggest wins in the inviting these small business owners, or actually in the performance training space, coaches, inviting them in to train with our staff and just say, hey, would you like to come on in and get a lift in during our staff lift?
Yep.
It's partially because I want to do right by them, but it's also partially because I want them to see we practice what we preach.
Yep.
And we take our craft seriously. And it's just a demonstration of expertise in-house. That works really, really well. And it also gives us a bigger window of time to learn more about what they do and how we can help them. Because there's just conversationally a lot of things that happen while you train with people.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'll say that you mentioned the law of reciprocity. I think the threshold, the bar for generating someone's inclination to reciprocate is so much lower than you would think.
Yeah,
it takes so very little. When someone says something nice about me on Instagram, I feel like I have to go and and double tap and comment back and share one of their things because I feel indebted. And I'll tell you a funny story. I heard from Ben, our COO, I believe that's what we call Ben. I don't even know. Secret weapon. And he said, hey, can you connect me with your Mark and my mutual friend Danny so I can pick his brain about compensation for a similar role in his operation that we're thinking about introducing at BFU. And I was like, yeah, I got this. I'll do this. So I send Danny an email and I BCC Ben on it. And my intention was to basically communicate to Ben, like, hey, Ben, I put a feeler out there to see if I can facilitate this conversation. Just so you know, I did what you asked. I'll circle back. But instead, Ben interpreted that as an intro, not realizing he was BCC'd. And he just responded. He's like, thanks for the intro, Danny. When are we talking? And Danny was very quickly like, oh, okay. Here's my Calendly link. And Ben booked it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, Danny didn't even get a chance to read my email, and Ben's thanking him for me volunteering his time. And now I'm like, how am I going to pay Danny back? What am I going to do to make sure? He probably is going to chat with him for 10 or 15 minutes. But last night, I went to bed last night being like, I got to come up with a creative way to reciprocate for Danny. And it won't leave me until I do. And so I know that when we do these things for other business owners, gym owners, it doesn't take a real significant gesture to trigger that mindset and get people to want to work with you, for you, alongside you. And so just be a giver. It doesn't take long until it comes back around.
Yep. That's all very true.
And read The Go-Giver. I read that first book every year. I read that on January 1st every year. It takes me maybe 2 days, 2 sittings to read it.
Just like aggressive, relentless.
The Go-Giver Leader is also decent.
Yep. So we don't have a ton of time left. I think the final thing I want to hit on, or maybe 2 things, is first I'll just say, yes, you also need your list of what is helpful for you, because in practice, that actually can also be an act of generosity, because instead of making them figure out what would be useful for you, if you create a list of things that are potentially useful for your business, if and when it comes time where they ask, or it's appropriate of you to make an ask for some sort of help or support, you have something specific to make it easier for them. And it, like a hyper specific example of this would be if they do want to send out an email or two or three to their list, you can write that on their behalf. You don't make them write an email. And frankly, depending on their proficiency in email marketing, you likely would want to handle that anyway. So, but you start with, here's all the things we could do for them. My buddy Sean Pastuch, I went and visited his place in Long Beach recently, in Long Island, and he said something really cool. We wanted to be the most valuable business to other businesses in the neighborhood. And I thought that was so awesome. But yes, it does come a time where you might, you ideally want some help, some support from at least some of these businesses, and make it easy for them by being clear on what are the things that are valuable for you. The final thing I want to share here, and this is maybe the most important thing and the biggest change for how I have thought about this, is the biggest mistake I see when people do this is joint ventures, business partnerships are a little actually high risk, high return. Here's what I mean by this. You might need to talk to 50 businesses. I hope it's a lot faster, but you might need to talk to 50 businesses before you strike oil. When you strike oil, it can go amazing. You might get lucky. It might be the third, fourth, and fifth business you talk to. Each start driving you several good leads every single week. For a lot of small gyms, that will change the game. And if you get lucky and you strike oil early, you're getting fantastic return for minimal actual amounts of effort on your part. On the other hand, if you get unlucky, it might not be till that 40th, 50th business. So like many things in marketing, if I were to assign the place where I see this most commonly go wrong, it's simply not understanding the volume necessary to get the results that you need. I think, Pete, you were alluding earlier, I made up a number, which I have no data on, but feels directionally correct, which is about 1 out of 20 businesses are going to get all the way down the field and play ball with you. About 1 out of 20. You probably, if you're talking to 20 businesses, probably 5 to 10, you won't even really be able to get in touch with anybody. You won't really get past even the front desk manager. So I used to say, talk to 1 to 2 businesses per month. I think if that's all you have time for, because listen, you do have to consider this against how else you could be spending your time, what other lead generation activities you have. If you sign up in the link below for Gym Lead Blueprint, there might be some lower hanging fruit to get leads faster if that's something that's really necessary for you. But I think this is a very important strategy to leverage. And the biggest thing I see people do wrong is just not getting the mindset of this is going to take a higher volume than feels fair. And that, frankly, is the case for many things in business.
Yeah, I mean, look, we decided to email. We pulled a list of all of the college coaches in New England inside of, say, a 3 to 4 hour drive of CSP's facility. And we wanted to make a push for getting their athletes to register in our summer program. Yep. And I sent 70 emails. And I want to say between number 65 and 70 on this long list, basically prioritized by who I thought would engage. I got no responses until we got to like number 67. Yeah. And I was so demoralized and just angry, like, you know what, I'm just going to see this through. And I sent them all individualized, not just like, dear insert coach name. I sent 70 different individualized messages. And the one that came back sent me $12,000 worth of summer registrations. And it was right as I was about to quit. And so you just gotta play the numbers game. And I do bring that up because relationships with college coaches when you are a performance training facility are joint ventures. Yep. We are sending him back really polished athletes. Yep. We take basically of the guys that we are sending back, we helped him. We also hurt him though, because at least one of the 3 were like, this guy's too good for that program now. And he is going to, he's going to be a flight risk because you take a D3 arm and you turn him into a potential D1 guy. He's good for business in the sense that he's going to show up and make the program look good. He's a little bit risky because he maybe got too good, but it's still a mutually beneficial relationship for the coaches involved. We're just making his on-field product better further down the road. So you just got to fight through that long game and know that it's just numbers. That's the more lines you put in the water, the more likely you are to pull something out.
Yep. And to say nothing of this is a final thought. Also, you'll get better at this. So get reps at it. At the beginning, it's gonna feel weird. You'll get better at doing this, but you'll have to be realistic about the amount of volume you need. And I think, writing 70 emails, what a great example of that phenomena. All right, Pete, any other burning thoughts you feel inspired to share on this topic before we bid our listeners adieu?
No, I got to go dump more money into my pool.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, if you want to support Pete's pool fund, go ahead, click the link below. And remember, it's only $47. So bad news for Pete. You're not going to contribute much. So seriously, I'm very, very excited about this. Again, it's September 9th, 10 a.m. to 12 EST. There will be a video if you can't attend live, but only those who register. So please click that link below. Enjoy. Have an amazing day. Pete, always great to see you. And we'll see you next time, fitness business nerds.
Thank you, Mark.
Adieu.